Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is David Talbot. I'm Managing Director and Head of Research at Red Cloud Securities, and I'm delighted to host another webinar on uranium today. We are going to hear from Skyharbour Resources CEO Jordan Trimble and its VPX Serdar Donmez. Now, during today's webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. Before we get to that, Jordan will provide an overview and outlook, and then we'll take some questions. We'll type your questions into the chat box at any time. We'll get to as many as we can. But before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of the corporate presentation. That's skyharbourltd.com, with Skyharbour being spelled out with the O-U-R at the end. For Red Cloud Securities, I'd highlight this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation of buy or sell securities. We note this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek out their own professional advice before investing. So please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on Skyharbour Resources. So with that, I now turn it over to Jordan and Serdar to update the audience on the company.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Dave. Thank you, Red Cloud, for hosting this webinar. And I wanted to introduce everyone to our VP of Exploration, Serdar, who's halfway across the country from me in Saskatchewan, and our newest major addition to our team, having joined us after a very illustrious career in the Athabasca Basin and with Denison and a few other companies. So I'll let Serdar introduce himself, but before we get into our team and what we're doing and our projects, just a quick high-level summary here, as it's a very, very exciting time for Skyharbour and our investors. We are working our way through what is going to be our largest annual drill campaign we've ever carried out, 16,000 to 18,000 meters of drilling across our two co-flagship Russell and Moore Lake projects. We still have most of that to drill, and most importantly, we still have all the assays to report. So this is going to be probably the most catalyst-rich 6 to 10 months coming up between now and well into 2026 that we've ever had. We wanted this year to make sure that with all the drilling that we're doing, that as much as we can, concentrate the drilling such that the timing of the news flow and the drill results, it works well with the market. We saw last year, we put out some very good news. It was in the middle of the summer, including a new high-grade discovery at Russell and some very high-grade, nice numbers from Moore. Stock responded positively initially, but as we all know, it can be a little bit quieter in the summer. So we still have a lot of assays pending, but this year we're going to be timing that as we've concentrated most of that drilling for the results to start coming out with the market seasonality, where we see usually a pretty notable pickup in activity and price action is in the latter months of the year. So 16,000 to 18,000 meters of drilling at Russell and Moore. Serdar will be talking a bit about that later in the presentation. But also in addition to that, we have our busiest year planned and slated from our partner companies as a part of our prospect generator business. And this year we're expecting an additional 15,000 to 16,000 meters of drilling, including a 7,000 meter drill program by Orano at our Preston project, our JV partnership with them over on the west side of the Athabasca Basin. So in total, you're going to get exposure to over 30,000 meters of combined drilling across numerous projects in the Athabasca Basin, fully funded and permitted for all of this. And the partner companies are funding a good chunk of those meters being drilled. So a lot to look forward to between now and early in 2026. It's not just the drilling, though. We do have a number of other things that we're working on, staking, additional project acquisitions, and new property deals that you'll see news flow out on between now and year end. So a lot to look forward to. Dave did a great job going through this disclaimer here, our forward-looking disclaimer. Statement disclaimer, we'll be making forward-looking statement. Please do read this when you have some time. Investment highlights. I mentioned all the drilling, over 30,000 meters of combined drilling that we're carrying out with us and our partner companies. But just for those unfamiliar with Skyharbour, we are a high-grade uranium exploration and prospect generator business. 1.5 million acres across 36 projects. This is the third largest mineral tenure holding in the region behind Cameco and Atha. These projects range from early stage exploration properties right through to more advanced stage exploration assets that either host pounds in the ground, small uranium deposits, which is a key differentiator with Skyharbour and most other exploration companies in the basin. We do offer that pounds in the ground exposure. But you get the full spectrum. You get the early stage, more grassroots properties. We've got plenty of those, typically as a part of our prospect generator business, right through to the more advanced stage projects, again, with either a small uranium resource and or high-grade multi-percent U3O8 in previous diamond drilling. For example, at one of our co-flagship projects, Russell, we announced some multi-percent high-grade for the first time that we've been drilling at the project last year, and we're following up on that now this year. In addition to the projects, we have a hybrid model. We're focused on making new discoveries and resource expansion at our main projects that we're advancing, and we couple that with prospect generation. So we have a very robust and growing prospect generator business consisting of 9 partner companies advancing 13 of those 36 projects in our portfolio and potentially spending over $70 million in combined project consideration, about half of that in exploration and development funding, and the other half in cash and shares coming in to Skyharbour. We've already received plenty of cash and stock this year from our various partner companies. And as the market continues to pick up, I expect we'll see those numbers continue to increase. This is a great way for us to raise a little bit of additional capital. We typically receive between $1.5 million to $2 million in cash and stock a year from these partners. And most importantly, generates a lot of additional news flow, and they advance these other secondary and tertiary projects in our portfolio. Strong management team and technical team. Got Sidar here, so he'll introduce himself soon. And then last but not least, we also have our 3 larger corporate strategic partners, 3 big stamps of approval, one of which is Denison Mines. They've been a large corporate shareholder now for almost a decade. Their president and CEO, Dave Cates, is a director of Skyharbour. They own a fairly substantial position and actually participated in the financing that we carried out late last year, which funds us right through this year. So a very important part of our story and a great working relationship we have with Denison and the team there. Rio Tinto, one of the largest diversified miners in the world. We have now a joint venture partnership with them at our Russell Lake project, and they too are a large corporate shareholder of Skyharbour. And then last but not least, Orano. And I mentioned earlier, Orano's carrying out our largest partner-funded drill program, which has just commenced at our Preston project, and that'll carry on right into the fall with news flow to follow. So 3 notable, substantial strategic shareholders and or JV partners at various projects in our project portfolio. So to summarize this slide, you can think of Skyharbour as that one-stop shop for high-grade uranium exploration and discovery potential in the world's most prolific jurisdiction for uranium exploration, development, and mining, with one of the most dominant land packages, and now this year, by a fair margin, the largest combined drill campaign that we've ever carried out as a company, inclusive of our partner companies as well. Now, the management team and board, myself and Jim Pettit, we've been running the company based here in Vancouver after having sold a gold company called Bayfield Ventures. Saw a unique opportunity back in 2013, 2014, 2015 to start acquiring projects in the Athabasca Basin at very attractive valuations. And that was really the genesis of the company. Teamed up with a great group of geologists in Saskatchewan. Dave Cates, who I mentioned, president and CEO of Denison Mines, he's personally become a very large shareholder as well, in addition to Denison corporately becoming a large shareholder of Skyharbour. Joe Gallucci joined us as an independent director a number of years ago. He's the head of investment banking at Laurentian Bank, brings a wealth of capital markets experience. And before I let Serdar introduce himself, just a few others here. Paul Matizik is a strategic advisor. He's built and sold 6 mining companies, including one uranium company he sold for almost $2 billion in 2007. So large shareholder and a strategic advisor. And more recently as well, we added Brady Rack as our VP of Business Development. He was a top producing broker here in Vancouver at Ventum and joined us late last year. Now moving back to our geological team, very proud of this group of geologists based in Saskatoon, where Serdar is. And most that are familiar with Skyharbour will know Dave and Christine, and more recently Sean and Dylan. But Serdar, if you could please introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about your history here in the Athabasca.
Sure. Excuse me. Well, thanks, Jordan, and thanks for having me on. And it's great to be here and to have the opportunity to share some updates on our exploration work at Skyharbour. For those who don't know me, I've spent most of my career exploring for uranium in the Athabasca Basin. The better part of it at Denison Mines, where I was deeply involved in various capacities, advancing the Wheeler River project. I was there from the early days through the discoveries of Phoenix and Griffin deposits and up to the completion of the feasibility study in 2023. Obviously, that experience has shaped my approach to uranium exploration and taught me a few things, different strategies required to discover and advance these high-grade deposits in the Athabasca Basin. That being said, it's never about one person. At Skyharbour, we're a small but highly experienced team that has worked on some of the world's largest high-grade uranium deposits and mines. And it is that collective expertise that drives our progress here.
Great, thank you. So just moving on to our capital structure here, and then we'll jump in and talk a little bit about the uranium market and then get right into the project. So the cap structure, $204 million out, trades in the $65 million to $70 million range. Incredible value proposition here right now. You can see, insiders have added to their positions in the recent 6 to 12 month period. Anytime we've seen it trade kind of in this range, it's usually been a good entry point, especially given the time of year now in the summer months, where it's not unusual to see a little bit of weakness in the market, especially for some of the juniors. But September, usually starting even in late August, but September, October, November seasonally have been very, very strong months for this sector. And you'll see some of the notable and larger strategic shareholders: Denison, Rio. Management, we're 4 to 5%. As I mentioned, we've been adding to our position. We are in all of the major uranium mining ETFs. And just a quick note on that, we have seen some selling pressure from that over the last number of months, as there have been redemptions that have kind of disproportionately affected some of the smaller constituents in those ETFs. Now we are seeing that reverse, and this is where, again, it gets exciting going into this seasonally stronger period, where we could very well see those redemptions turn into inflows and buying come in as a result of that. So just something to keep an eye on over the next few months. And then you'll see some of the other larger institutional shareholders that have been longtime loyal supporters of the company over the last number of years. So well funded as well. I just want to highlight this, that we're fully funded right now for all of the drilling and work that we have planned. We still have cash and share payments coming in from partners, and we still have about 19 or 20 other 100% owned projects that we can, in inventory in our prospect generator business, that we can look to monetize. So this helps keep some of the equity dilution down as we move forward and we're advancing our main projects. Now, a couple of slides here that I won't spend a lot of time on. Happy to answer any questions in the Q&A or discuss the uranium and nuclear markets. But, we have seen this summer kind of unusually be a little more active, and certainly some positive headlines and developments revolving around big tech and hyperscalers, data center build out. Nuclear is the only baseload emissions-free, low-cost, reliable, safe source of electricity, perfect for this new potential source of demand. We saw the Trump administration 4x talks of a quadrupling of their nuclear capacity in the United States, positioning it as a global, once again, a global leader in nuclear power. Lofty goal, but even a small fraction of that's a significant increase in uranium demand in a country that does not produce a lot of uranium. But what we really like to emphasize, these headlines are great. We obviously saw the Sprott Physical Trust as well, making headlines, the $200 million raise, which at the very least sequestered 2 million pounds, although we did see the spot price kind of jump up and fall back. A lot of that was front running by traders, but nonetheless 2 million pounds sequestered. There's not a lot of mobile inventory out there, so that's a significant amount of pounds to be sequestered out of the market. But all of that being said, it's important to remember what's really going to drive this sector going forward and sustain a bull market. And it's the supply demand fundamentals, where you've got over 200 million pounds in anticipated or expected demand going forward annually, only producing about 150 to 160 million pounds of primary mine supply. So that's a cumulative supply gap of over 375 million pounds over the next decade. And the image at the bottom right there, you'll see utility uncommitted demand. This is a significant number of pounds that need to be contracted over the next 20 to 25 years, 1.2 billion pounds of contracting needed in the next 10 years. So this utility procurement cycle, which has been quiet this year, will ramp up. And in all likelihood, the utilities coming back to the market in the next 6 to 12 months. And we are now hearing, just even in the last few weeks, that a couple notable RFPs have come into the market. Utility interest has come back into the market. So I think this could be the start of a major ramp up in contracting and utility buying, purchasing over the coming years. But this is a significant amount of uncovered demand that is going to have to be sourced. And as we know, the market is bifurcating east versus west. We're seeing, Eastern supplies from places like Kazakhstan and other parts of Central Asia, more and more earmarked for end users in China, in Russia, and other parts of the world. Whereas the West there's a tenuous supply situation. Really, it's just Canada and Australia, a little bit of production out of the US, but not much. And so the Athabasca Basin has a major role to play going forward in providing that long-term secure supply of nuclear fuel to Western users and for Western demand. I'll jump right ahead to the project section, where you'll see we've got our what is now, as I mentioned, one of the largest project portfolios in the Athabasca Basin. And we are very much looking to find new deposits, delineate resources that can then service that future demand for nuclear power generation going forward, in particular in the West. So you've got 1.5 million acres in a project portfolio that's taken years to build up. The two most notable projects that we're advancing are Russell Lake and Moore Lake projects, and I'll just circle them here so you can get an idea of where we're talking about. So these are the projects that we're spending most of our time, money, and effort on this year, with 16,000 to 18,000 meters of drilling currently underway. But you'll see we have our other projects in various shades of blue, green, and purple. And these projects, most of them are a part of our prospect generator business. So we actively seek partners to option or JV these partners out to. We have, as I mentioned, 9 partner companies spending over 70 million currently. We're looking to add to that over the coming months and coming years. But it's a great way for us to remain focused at our two main assets, which we see as our most prospective assets that can deliver us and our shareholders that market-moving drill hole or drill result that we've seen other companies announce in recent years. And again, just want to emphasize that one drill hole can completely change the fate of a company, the size of the company. We've seen some other notable recent discoveries, and at Skyharbour, we feel like we're the next company that's going to deliver that new big high-grade uranium discovery in the Athabasca Basin. And just a quick note before I do jump in, to Russell and more specifically, and some of the other projects. When you look at this project portfolio relative to previous cycles, 4 of these 36 projects were in a company called J&R. That was a $400 million company in 2007 when there was the booming uranium market in the mid-2000s. We now have all 4 of those projects in this portfolio, in addition to the 32 projects on top of that. So the re-rate potential is substantial with this existing project portfolio that you see here. So as we see this uranium market, I believe continue the next leg higher, the next kind of breakout, as it has been, a bit of a volatile year and a half. This next leg up, I think, is going to see a major re-rating, help with a major re-rate for this company, and given the project portfolio that we have in there currently. Now, the Russell Lake project, for those that aren't familiar with Russell, it's a relatively new asset in our project portfolio that we acquired from Rio Tinto. We now own about just under 58%. Rio Tinto owns the minority interest, and we're carrying on as a joint venture with Rio at this project. It's a big property, over 73,000 hectares of prime Athabasca Basin real estate, basically wedged in between the McArthur River mine to the north, the Key Lake Mill, one of 2 operating mills on the eastern side of the basin just to the south. And importantly for us, our largest corporate shareholder, Denison Mines, their Wheeler River development project, which includes the Griffin and Phoenix deposits. We essentially encircle Wheeler to the north, to the east, and to the south, as you'll see here. And then to the east of Russell is our 100% owned Moore Lake project, our other co-flagship asset. And I'll let Sardar talk a little bit about the drilling, what we have planned there, what we're excited about. But one thing I do want to mention before he talks about the specific drilling and the work that's being done there is the infrastructure on the project. You have the haulage road that services the McArthur River mine, the power lines that go up to the mine as well that run alongside the road, and an exploration camp that is, I'll just highlight it here on the map, right in this area here. So close to, right off the road, close to Phoenix, and importantly, close to a number of the key targets that we're drilling. This infrastructure allows us to drill at some of the lowest all-in per meter costs of any company in the basin, at less than Canadian $350 a meter, which is inclusive of everything, including the drilling, the assays, supplies, fuel, you name it. So it's very economical to drill there. We get a lot of bang for our buck. Most other exploration companies in the Athabasca Basin that we're tracking, your drill costs, and especially for more remote projects, you're looking at $600 to $700+ all in Canadian a meter. So we're at about half of that rate currently at both our Russell and Moore Lake projects. So I'll let Sardar talk a little bit about the specific targets that we're excited about, and then we'll move on from there.
Sure. So we recently wrapped up our first phase of 2025 drilling at Russell Lake. It was an important program that helped us get a better handle on the controls on the known mineralization at specifically at Fork. And it also gave us our first chance to drill some new targets. We'd identified through recent geophysics, which was completed in early 2025, and in the extensive desktop work that is ongoing. So the results have been really encouraging. We've focused on 3 different areas this winter. So important to note, we're in elephant country here. So we have McArthur River to the north, Phoenix and Griffin to the west, and Moore Lake with Maverick deposit to the east of us, and Key Lake to the south. So you have to understand the geology and how these trends that hold high-grade deposits on the Wheeler River property, most of them continue onto our property. So we're focusing on, we know, uranium-bearing prolific trends on our side of the property. So we started our winter program on our FLT, Fox Lake Trail, target area. I'll just highlight it here. And this winter, and first we did some modern geophysics, which wasn't really done on the project since the early 2000s. So we felt like we needed to do some follow-up modern geophysics work on FLT, and we went back and drilled a few holes, and the results have been really encouraging. We're seeing the right structures, alteration in geochemistry, all the indicators of a fertile uranium system, and exactly the kind of signs that get us uranium geologists excited. And from there, we wanted to drill some follow-up holes at Fork, where high-grade uranium was discovered last year, up to 3% at the unconformity at a relatively shallow depth. The focus was to understand what was controlling the mineralization, the structures, and the geology. And we had a great winter, and we're still expecting some assays back here. And last but not least, our Sphinx target within a kilometer of the Phoenix deposit on the project, located to the northwest of the Fork Zone, which was never drilled before until we drilled our first hole this year. So, and we're hoping to follow up the results there in our second phase of drilling later this year.
So it's been a great start to the year. It's important to emphasize that last year we had this breakthrough at the Fork and broader Grayling target area. We now know definitively there's high grade in the system, and this is the year that we believe that we can go in and again drill and deliver the market moving type drill results that a lot of investors in the space look for with these exploration companies. It's a very, very prospective area, given that as Sidar said, you're right on that main mine trend that hosts these large deposits on the eastern side of the basin. And specifically for us as well, you've got you see on this map here, you're completely surrounded by much larger companies in Cameco, Orano, and as I said, importantly for us, our largest corporate shareholder, Denison, that's building a mine just a few kilometers away from where we're drilling. So very, very important, pivotal few months coming up. We are planning to drill a total of about 10 to 11,000 meters at Russell this year, which again will take place in 2 phases, so lots of assays yet to come from all of that. Now, in addition to our Russell project, we have our other co-flagship 100% owned advanced stage exploration asset called Moore Lake, and this project we have had in the portfolio for some time. It's adjacent to Russell Lake, again allowing for relatively inexpensive drilling. It's as I mentioned, we're able to drill there about 350 Canadian all in a meter. The access to the project is from Russell as well, and again, strategically located, proximal to mining infrastructure and other larger operators in the region. Now, this project does have a bit more of a history in terms of high-grade drill results, and there is a small high-grade deposit there, what's called the Maverick deposit, consisting of several high-grade smaller lenses of uranium mineralization that are relatively shallow. But you'll see here some of the historical drilling and drill results where there's been grades as high as 21% over 1.5 meters. That was within 6% over 6 meters. Last year we ended up drilling couple holes that were quite significant, one of which intersected 7.3% U3O8 over 3 meters at the main Maverick Zone. So the last couple years have really been about trying to prove up as much as we can at this Maverick deposit, which you'll see on this slide here, these several yellow zones of mineralization along the conductor. It's about a 4.5 to 5 kilometer long fertile conductive corridor, which we actually now know extends another 5 or 6 kilometers to the southwest, which Sidar will discuss. But you'll see we've done a fair bit of drilling to prove up pounds, relatively shallow, mostly sandstone hosted, within 300, call it 250 to 300 meters of surface. And as we see typically in the basin, you get these pearls on a string, these lenses, that high grade lenses that can pinch and swell. And this recent news release from Moore Lake, which just came out about a month ago, was from the last bit of drilling that we carried out at the very, very end of last year at the project. There was one hole in particular that really we feel could be the most consequential hole at the project, drilled in the last 5 or 6 years, in that we were able to prove that the high grade core, which is represented by the purple color here, actually does potentially extend out 40 plus meters to the east. Looks like it pinches and swells and could reappear as a step out hole, or simply we've drilled into a new zone. But we announced a pretty substantial zone where we had just under 5% over a meter and a half, and that was within 6.4 meters of a percent and a half. Again, in an area that we were not expecting to see high grade at. So a very substantial finding for us. And I'll let Sidar talk a little bit more about the result, and most importantly, the drilling that we're just starting up is the drilling to follow up on that news that we announced just a month ago.
Sure. We just kicked off our summer program at Moore. The focus is to extend and expand the footprint of the known mineralization at the Maverick Zone. As Jordan mentioned, the ML2415 was a bit of a surprise. We weren't expecting to hit high-grade uranium 40 to 50 meters along strike outside the Maverick Zone, and so we're hoping to reproduce these results along strike of Maverick. Also, in addition to the drilling at Maverick, we're testing more regional targets along strike of Maverick Zone, what we're calling the Maverick Trend. There are some large gaps in drilling, historical drilling. We're talking about 2-3 kilometer gaps, and we're focusing on those as well. And then the Maverick Trend continues to the southwest. We carried out an airborne ZTEM survey earlier this summer. We're expecting the results back. So if when the results come back, we're excited to see the results, and hopefully the Maverick Trend continues for another 4 or 5 kilometers, and that the same trend actually continues on to our Russell Lake project. So the results can be quite consequential for us. And that's for Moore Lake in a nutshell.
One other thing, just before we move on to the prospect generator business, there was news out last week from Denison and Orano on the Sabre mining method, and they're now commercially producing up at McLean Lake. And Sabre is a proprietary mining method, surface mining method, developed by Orano as the operator, but Denison is a JV partner that really is perfectly suited for this kind of mineralization. So relatively shallow mineralization within 300 meters of surface, and small high-grade pods or lenses of uranium mineralization along these conductive corridors, where you can simply move the rig from pod to pod, and you need nearby infrastructure, including a mill, which there is this is just, again, northeast of Key Lake. So this is even though it's not the largest deposit yet, we still have a lot more drilling we think that can prove up additional zones of high-grade mineralization, either along strike or at depth in the underlying basement rocks. But given the commercial production announcement of Sabre, these pounds here become a lot more interesting when we look at it. When you look at it through the lens of either Sabre or potentially even ISR, as most of these high-grade pounds are sandstone hosted as well. So it's something that I think the market for us, Russell has been the new project that we've been allocating most of our time and budget too, and will remain and will continue to do that this year, given what we found last year and what we're on to and what we're seeing this year. But it's important to note that you have in Moore Lake here, a significant asset with pounds in the ground, and now potentially new mining methods that that could really open up these kinds of deposits going forward in the Athabasca Basin. Sudhar, did you have anything to add to that, or?
Well, I was gonna, the Sabre definitely, it opens up the door to potential future developments or paths that are more cost efficient and less invasive and more flexible, and it is tailor made for this the Maverick deposits like Maverick, high grade pods, shallow depths. But yeah, that's
great. So this is the snapshot of our prospect generator business. So now moving on from the two main assets, we have our prospect generation business, which is one of the more robust prospect generation businesses in the Athabasca of any company out there. It is still secondary to our focus at Russell and Moore and the high grade exploration and discovery and resource expansion that we're keyed in on at those assets. But it's become a more important part of Skyharbour. As you'll see here, 9 partner companies now spending potentially over $70 million in combined project consideration. Again, about half of that in exploration expenditures and in funding at these projects, and the other half in cash and in share payments. Just a quick note on a few of these to keep an eye out on this year. The largest partner-funded program, which is about half of the meters, or just under half of the meters that we're expecting from these partners, is coming from Orano at our Preston project. Now, this project is over on the west side by NextGen and what is now Paladin at Triple R. But you'll see on this map here, we have a big long border with NextGen. NextGen's been over the last number of years testing and drilling into conductors further to the east. And so this is becoming more interesting for us and for Orano at Preston. You'll see a number of these conductive corridors that trend from NextGen's ground onto our ground. So that program has just started, a 6,000 to 7,000 meter diamond drill program. It's relatively shallow drilling, so there's going to be 25 to 30 holes drilled is what we're expecting. And the news flow from this, again, timing will likely be later this year. But any sniff of any mineralization or higher grade mineralization would be a huge catalyst for us and our shareholders. We are maintaining our minority interest in this project with Orano, and so keep an eye out for updates as they work their way through the drilling and the subsequent news flow and results from that. Now, in addition to Orano, a couple of our earn and option partners are planning some notable activity and work in the coming months. North Shore Uranium, which has just announced the final geochem assay results from the winter program at the South Falcon East project. And a significant part of that was some mineralization that they intersected outside of the deposit area. There is a small deposit at the project, inferred resource that they're looking to expand. But in addition to that, they're looking to find some high-grade, kind of more traditional, conventional high-grade basin mineralization that they can then go and start proving up a new discovery around. And they've for the first time at the project, were successful in discovering all of the right kind of clay alteration and mineralization that you typically see associated with higher grade uranium mineralization in the basin. So they are planning a follow-up summer program that'll commence in the coming months here. And we're quite excited for them to get back to work there. North Shore Uranium as well, the Falcon project, they too are planning a summer program, drill program. And then just last week, we announced our UraX Resources, a private company currently looking to list in the next year. They've just commenced a 2,600 meter drill program at the South Dufferin project, which is an interesting asset in that it's on trend to Cameco's Centennial deposit in the south central part of the Athabasca Basin. There's a number of showings and previous drilling at South Dufferin that yielded mineralization and decent drill results, but it hasn't had much of any work on it in over 6 years. So quite excited for that program to kick off as well. And both Hatchet and Mustang carrying out field programs this year. So again, this is not just the biggest year for us in terms of the drilling at Russell and Moore, but you can see on this here a number of our partner companies are carrying out substantial drilling programs totaling to about 15 to 16,000 meters. And again, continuing to make cash and share payments to Skyharbour as they complete their respective earn-ins. And before I wrap up, I don't know, Sardar, if there's anything that you want to kind of highlight on this slide here.
For sure. Well, I'll start with Orano's, the Preston project. They're currently doing a pretty large drill program on the property. It's most of these trends they're drilling right now are virtually untested. This is the Western basin hasn't received as much interest as the Eastern Athabasca Basin, but since the discoveries of the Triple R and the Arrow deposits and a couple of smaller ones, now we're paying more attention to the West. Similarly, the South Dufferin project, where Eurex is currently conducting a drill program. Again, it's a great project, really good trends that host high-grade mineralization to the north. So we're all sitting waiting for results. And like you said earlier, Jordan, one drill can change everything. So it only takes one drill hole.
So these, I won't get into too much of the details on the specific projects. This is all on the website, and you can go and look into the partner-funded programs and projects at your leisure. But suffice to say, very, very significant year of partner-funded activity at various other projects. Now we do have, as I mentioned earlier, a fairly substantial inventory of 100% owned projects. We are getting continued interest in new option and JV agreements. So this is another unique way that we can raise capital going forward and have, again, partners come in to fund the exploration at these other projects, providing additional optionality value to Skyharbour going forward on top of the existing partnerships that we already have. So I'll wrap up here with this final slide, the upcoming catalysts, which we've talked at length about, but just as again a recap of all of them. Major drill campaign at Russell and Moore Lake, 16 to 18,000 meters of drilling that's underway. We are expecting most of that news flow between now and year end on the results. We again want to make sure that the timing of that news flow is suitable as much as we can with the market. We see again in later in the year, usually there's a stronger seasonal period, and so this unlike last year where the summer months can be a bit softer. I think this year the good news will not fall on deaf ears. We are working on a resource NI 43-101 report. However, after this recent drill hole that we announced at Moore Lake and the summer program, that'll be pushed out a bit, as this recent drill hole is, as I mentioned, probably the most consequential hole in terms of a resource expansion drill hole that we've had at the project in a number of years. And the drilling that we're going to be carrying out now that's just started at Moore Lake, could change that quickly. We could wake up and have another major high grade hit that adds pounds fairly quickly to that. So, but nonetheless, an important upcoming milestone. And again, now with Sabre in commercial production up at McLean Lake, those pounds become a lot more interesting. The partner funded programs, as I mentioned, 15 to 16,000 meters across several projects, notably Orano with the 6,000 to 7,000 meter program at Preston. We are, as I mentioned, in advanced negotiations with other potential new partners to option or monetize or JV out some of our non-core remaining inventory projects that we have, some new staking and some new property acquisitions that we're working on. So keep an eye out for that. And last but not least, just the uranium market. We've seen some good headlines, positive headlines. We've seen a number of the kind of larger cap uranium names that have done, that have rebounded from earlier in the year. And I do think that we will see the smaller and mid cap names catch up here. We again typically do see a strong period later in the year, and you couple that with the news flow and the catalysts that we have coming up between now and year end. Again, all of that fully funded. We're in a great position to deliver again market moving drill results, as well as some of the other catalysts that we have coming up. So I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time today. It's been a pleasure to present, and happy to field any questions that you may have for Sardar and I.
Great. Thank you very much, Jordan, Sardar. Great presentation there. We are now going to kick off the Q&A portion of the webinar. Reminder to everybody online, you can type your text, your questions into the chat box at any time. We'll get to as many as we can here. Guys, let's start off with Moore Lake. So it's sort of your, apologize, Moore, sorry about that. It's your more mature project. You had quite a good press release in early June there. Phase 2 drill results included a high-grade step out there east of Maverick Lake East. You talked about that. What does that discovery tell you about the geometry of this trend, with uranium mineralization, either at Main Maverick, Maverick East, or this area?
Do you want to go ahead? Sure.
Yeah, why don't you take that?
Sure. Well, Maverick is a high grade deposit. It occurs in these high grade pods. There's also the basement potential at Maverick that hasn't really been tested adequately, but that's something we're also looking into as well. But the Maverick is your typical unconformity type Athabasca style uranium deposit. It is the 42-meter step out was like I said earlier, is a bit of a surprise. We weren't expecting any high grade. What it tells us is there's some drilling to the northeast, but there are large gaps, and the plan is to go and test those large gaps and potentially add more strike length to this deposit.
Yeah, is pinch and swell a real reality here?
It is. We do see these. So you got the main Maverick zone, and then it pinches out, and then Maverick East, and then we have multiple zones on the Maverick trend. So these pinch and swell it's a common thing in most mineral deposits, and it applies here as well. And where you have cross structures, they tend to pinch out and then swell out again along strike. So, and that's the theory we're testing.
So in this case, it's actually a good news. It seems to be swelling where you didn't exactly expect it.
Absolutely. Exactly. And as those that followed Skyharbour a number of years ago, when we first acquired Moore Lake, may recall that we, similar to what just happened here in the last month, the Maverick East zone was a new discovery we made after we acquired the project in 2016 and 2017. We basically went in and drilled right in between two widely spaced drill fences, thinking that, okay, maybe there's some mineralization, but we're not sure. And lo and behold, we hit in the first drill hole, it was 10% over 1.5 meters, and really opened up this new zone, which Sardar is saying here clearly is extension, high grade extension, but it kind of pinches off between the main Maverick and the Maverick East zone. So this new hole that we've announced, it looks like we're seeing a similar situation where yes, there's mineralization, widespread mineralization across the conductor, but the high grade comes and goes, and so within a 50-meter strike length, you can have a lot of uranium, and it hasn't been fully tested. There's a lot of drill fences, mineralized drill fences that are 50 to 100-meter step outs from each other, and there's no drilling in between. And we know it's a fertile conductor. We know there's the potential for 20+% U3O8. So this is now, exciting for us to be able to go back in there and, potentially drill into something that, again, could be a game changer for us, in particular in the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there are several ways you think you can improve this zone and find new uranium, like you said, either this area, further to the east along trend, at depth, so you said basement needs more testing, or along trend to the southwest as well. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on that? What areas really show the most potential to expand the zone or find new material on the project?
Well, I mean, Moore Lake is a fairly large project. It's the Maverick trend itself, in the immediate Maverick area, we're going to continue drilling these step out holes in between existing fences, large fences, and hopefully hit high grade uranium mineralization. And like I said, the basement potential hasn't really been tested completely. We see grades close to 10% in the basement that are still open. So we feel like we can still add some pounds in the basement. To the southwest, we're still trying to understand the geology to the southwest. We're potentially, we did the airborne survey. We're still waiting for the results, but potentially we might have to do some ground geophysics in the future to fine tune some of those targets. But that could open up a lot of possibilities to the southwest, where you're on a trend where that holds high grade uranium over 20%, and these things, we always say these things occur as pearls on a string. So when you have something, when you're on a good trend, and chances of you finding more of it is quite good. So to the southwest and to the northeast, and there's a lot. There are large gaps to the northeast where historical drilling had uranium intersections up to 1.2% that weren't really followed up. So there is no shortage of targets. This is just one target area on the Moore Lake projects, and there are more than 10 that we haven't even talked about. So
yeah, do you plan to drill that southwest area this year?
We do have plans to drill 1 or 2 holes just to test some of the ideas we have, but yeah, I think that 4 kilometers is going to require a lot more work.
Yeah, and we'll drill a couple exploratory holes there this year, but there's the potential we can go back in next year and down the road. There's no lack of targets, but it's about prioritizing right now. Even though we've got a big drill campaign, we've got a project right beside Moore Lake that's twice the size, and we really want to explore it as quickly as we can, because we think at Russell, that's as we talked about in the presentation, there hasn't been a Maverick or a deposit discovered yet. We think we're right there with it.
Mm-hmm. To add to that, I mean, Russell is it's 5 or 6 Wheeler River project. It's a massive project with lots of potential. So we're busy.
Just one last question on Maverick. You do plan a resource estimate here. What made you push the timing of that out?
Yeah, just the result from that hole that we announced, and then now knowing that it changed the exploration strategy at the project. Quite frankly, as Sidar's mentioning, right, we weren't really planning on drilling along strike to the northeast. We thought we had kind of drilled it out, but that's clearly not the case anymore. So this next phase of drilling will give us a good sense of what more there is to the northeast. And if we're seeing that most of the high grade mineralization now is kind of tapered off with the drilling that's been carried out, we'll continue on it. But keep in mind too that it won't take much to input these last few holes, if you will, into that to get that get that resource, get that number in hand. And as we've talked about in the past, Dave, a big part of this is, it's not just the number of pounds, but how could you get to those pounds using one of the newer mining methods being proposed or now used in the basin. And so this news out of McLean Lake last week is quite important for us.
Yeah, no, and you mentioned that earlier, and I love that technology. I've been following it for a long time. Nice to see it finally come to fruition here. I'd say that 250 tons that they pulled out of the ground on average is probably a 4.5 by 4.5 by 4.5 meter area. So is it that pinpoint accuracy and lack of underground development costs that you think will work well for your projects?
Well, at Maverick, it's, like they highlight this in the news, and the technology is suited or designed for shallow but smaller pods of mineralization, right? And so what we have at Maverick is just that. It's you've got these lenses or pods, at least that's what we have currently. And so a conventional underground mine, it would be tricky at unless you have higher uranium prices. But with the surface mining method, and being able to selectively go into specific zones, yeah, it does open up several of these call it potentially orphaned deposits or showings that 15, 20 years ago just maybe weren't big enough. But now with this this technology, it makes these deposits interesting.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. So, Russell Lake, Rio Tinto quite likes the project. They kept a JV interest there. You started serious drilling perhaps last year. How are you going about testing such a massive land package? How do you whittle that down?
Sardar, you want to?
Yeah, sure. It's a massive land package. It's we were just looking at it the other day. You can fit 6 Wheeler Rivers in it. But there is some historical drilling, along some of the trends to the north. We talked about FLT, Fox Lake Trail, but a lot of the drilling focused on testing these old targets identified using old EM methods. So we've done some more recent modern EM surveys and identified basically targets right next to where the existing drilling was. And we're seeing really interesting results. How do we prioritize? Well, heads down, just everything is done in 3D now. 2025, we look at everything in 3D. We go through historical reports, the more recent results, and identify these high priority targets and prioritize those. Unfortunately, we can't really go drill every target that we'd like to drill, but prioritization is key through geophysics or desktop studies, and that's what we do.
And just on with Sardar joining us a year ago, just under a year ago. I mean, that was I was a part of this, right? It is a big project. There are a lot of targets. We scratched the surface of something last year that we think could be much larger. We've got a great team, but Sardar specifically worked at Wheeler for 17 years. He knows the rocks, he knows the geology, better than anyone in that area. And from an exploration discovery standpoint, he was there at Phoenix and Griffin. And so, he saw what we were drilling last year and was very intrigued by it, and has come and joined us as a VP of exploration, who again has specific knowledge on that part of the Athabasca Basin. And again, one other point that Sardar did a good job of highlighting earlier is you look at who's beside us and you look at the trends. A lot of the kind of higher priority targets that we're looking at right now are simply the continuation of those high grade uraniferous conductors from Wheeler River. And it makes a lot of sense for us to go in and explore those as obviously good geological targets, but also if you find something that is that close to what will likely be the next newest producing mine in the basin, there's potential synergies there. There's the strategic proximity to the project that I think makes the story very interesting.
Yeah, that project's just on the other side of your camp and the road. So, when you came over, what new insight or methods did you bring to the Skyharbour exploration team? Have you been able to suggest any new exploration strategies that have had positive impact?
Absolutely. Well, I also come from a resource background, so I do everything in 3D. So that was part of it. After joining Skyharbour, we started using the Leapfrog. So we do all of our drill hole designing, reviews. Everything is done in 3D. We have 3D models of the geology and then the structures on both projects. And so that's part of it. And then my experience at Denison, we did a lot of different geophysical methods, used different methods. For instance, resistivity was what led to the discovery of the Phoenix deposit. So, we use things like small moving loop EM surveys, which this project lacked the Russell significantly. So one of the first things we did after I joined the team, we did moving loop EM survey to identify these discrete fault zones, discrete structures within these broad conductive corridors. You could be, with the uranium exploration, you could be within 100 meters, 200 meters of a known deposit. Of a deposit, and you'd have no idea if you're not on the right trend, if you're not testing the right structure, you're likely to miss a world-class deposit. So that was one of the things that more modern geophysics and working in 3D.
Yeah, geophysics always seems to reinvent itself with
absolutely.
So okay, maybe to wrap up, or very close, because we're past the top of the hour here. You spoke of having one of the largest portfolios in the basin. One viewer notes, all this sounds great when we're in a uranium bull market, and I do think we're seeing a price that is having a hard time finding itself. But can you explain why the stock hasn't necessarily reacted as well as some of the others in the sector?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, I commented earlier. I think a part of you look at some of the larger cap companies that have performed well. I mean, just take Cameco for example. I think a big part of the outperformance there has been the fact that they've got Westinghouse and they're it's a much larger, more liquid name. Some of the smaller cap, certainly most of the smaller cap names and some of the mid cap names haven't kept pace with some of the larger cap names. The ETF situation, in the last, I mentioned that in the last few months in particular, the major redemptions that we've seen have disproportionately hurt and impacted the smaller cap names in those ETFs. So that's an easy one. Now that can change quickly. It's a double-edged sword, right? So with inflows coming in, that changes drastically. Also with rebalancings, after every quarter, every 6 months, and we have seen this in the past where there can be a lag. If you look at the last major cycle in the 2000s, you look at the performance of the uranium equities in 2002 to 2008. Cameco outperformed significantly in the first 5 years of that bull market. They were up 600-700% in the first, call it 2/3 or 3/4 of that market. They ended up, 800 and a total of 800 or 900%. So did quite well. The juniors, the bottom 50th percentile of the companies in the sector, only were up about 200 to 300% in those first few years, and on average ended up being up over 1,200%. Most of that came in the final 18 to 24 months of that bull market. So it's not unusual to see, a bit of a lag with some of the smaller and mid cap names. And that's just the macro side of it. You add in, a major new discovery, positive drill results, property transactions well received by the market, potential M&A down the road, that can add to that. So, there's an incredible value proposition here, as there has been in previous summers. There's a seasonality that we typically see. So I think that you look at that and that, that would explain a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Yeah, and your thank you and thanks for the answer in that question. As we wrap up here, you said you're fully funded for exploration. You have cash payments coming in over the next couple of years. Now, what's your current cash position and what's your exploration budget for the rest of this year?
Yeah, so we've got about 6 million with probably another, I'd say, close to 1 million coming in from cash and shares from partners. So we're in good shape. That fully funds all of the remaining drilling that we have at Russell and Moore right into next year. As I mentioned as well, we do have quite a bit of inventory in terms of other projects. So the idea here would be to try to monetize some of that between now and year end, and bring in new partners, and that should put us in good shape here between now and right into next year.
Great. Okay, Jordan Sirdar from Skyharbour Resources. As always, it's been a pleasure talking to you guys today.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you, everybody else, for tuning in. Reminder that Red Cloud Securities will be back tomorrow afternoon when I sit down with GoviX Uranium. So that's July 24th already at 2 p.m. Eastern. So have a great day. Thank you for supporting Red Cloud's webinar series.